Hello and welcome. Well, we're still having computer problems, so we're not going to have intro music today, so we're going to get right into it. Right after we talk about, stuff like Fisker and Audi and Jaguar, Nissan, Porsche, Bentley, new WRX, and a poll that we took a few weeks ago. But first up on that list, let's talk about Fisker. Fisker, who's just... the problems just continue. To recap a little bit, well, they had the whole issue where they were having production issues here and there. Then they had the whole deal where their battery supplier went under and actually got bought up by a Chinese company. The whole deal with Consumer Reports where the vehicle absolutely went total meltdown and had a big issue and a big brouhaha. The whole deal with the hurricane where they lost a bunch of cars and the fight over the ensuing huge fight that actually ended up happening between them and the insurance company over the automobiles. Then the whole deal where it gets an arbiter actually going over top, trying to help the company save money and find a partner. Then it looked like that maybe some partners were coming in, and then that kind of fell through when old Hendrik Fisker here actually stepped down from the company. And then any unrest that happens in the top part of any type of company really scares off investors. Had two major companies that were still involved, two Chinese manufacturers, auto manufacturers that is, and they came in and then both of them one by one dropped out. Well, now we got further issues as now Fisker has actually put all their employees on unpaid furlough upon further notice. So this is not good signs, at least for this auto manufacturer. We'll see what comes of this thing in the future. We'll keep you in tuned. This next little bit of news, we got official details, well, kind of official details. Matt Watson, one of the guys you may have seen on YouTube, does some great jobs on some other auto channels. But he actually came out just a couple of days ago and actually came out with the new S3 numbers. We didn't have the numbers in the last video on what this car was going to produce power-wise, but the 2.0-liter turbocharged four-cylinder was actually going to put out 300 brake horsepower, and it's going to go 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds, so pretty doggone impressive piece of kit, not to mention very good-looking. Next up on the list, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Jaguar. Some rumors are floating around that Jaguar is actually going to be putting the old F-Type here in somewhat of a situation like the Porsche 911, where there's going to be several variants of this automobile coming down the pike very soon. The convertible version will come out, and obviously it's V6 and V8 forms. Next, we're going to see the coupe version that's going to come out soon. We're actually talking about maybe a Targa top version, i.e. the Porsche 911, and rumors floating around about that. Also maybe the R-Type, which is probably pretty much in the bag, because any type of Jaguar that's out there will get an R version sooner or later down the line, and we'll keep you in tune what comes of this. But I think this is probably one of the best ideas that Tata actually had about this particular outfit, about putting this deal into place, having a bunch of variants of one of their iconic, well, I guess soon-to-be iconic sports cars. Really could put Jaguar on the map and really try to spread out what Jaguar is all about. And I think this is a brilliant move. Can't wait to see what comes of this in the future. Next up on the list comes from Nissan, as Nissan let out a little bit of talk that the 2015 Nissan GTR, in their words, will electrify their consumers or their fans. Now, this has got the rumor mill all abuzz on what the next GTR could be. Now, there's a lot of talk that there may be a baseline GTR, which would be much like what the GTR is now. But there could be a high-end version that, if it's going to electrify, then chances are it's going to be a hybrid version. I'm talking about numbers somewhere around 700 brake horsepower, which means 0 to 60 numbers with the type of torque that an electric motor can put out is going to be mind-boggling. I mean, if they came out 0 to 60 in a tenth of a second faster with that supposed new 7-speed transmission, if you get the hybrid version, you may be able to knock off at least another tenth, maybe 2 off of this thing, which is going to put this thing in rarefied air as far as 0 to 60 numbers, and obviously going to be a monster around the Nürburgring. We'll wait and see what comes of this deal, but it's a little jab that Nissan gave to all the people out there that are waiting on this car, and maybe a little glimpse of what the future could hold for this car. Next up on the list, the Porsche Cayman's in the news, as there's some rumors floating about that there's going to be a new, more powerful Cayman. Talking about maybe a GT3 version or a GT2, maybe an RS version. always liked the Cayman. The Cayman's lighter weight than the 911. It's a mid-engine car rather than a rear-engine car like the 911 is. But there's also a trick in this deal. If they do build a hot rod version of the Cayman, or a little bit hotter version, it's not going to be hot as it could be because it's never going to step on the toes of its big brother, the 911. So we'll wait and see what comes of this particular deal. As the Cayman's actually lighter and a little bit nippier as far as like when they first started testing this car versus the 911 at the Nürburgring Nordschleife loop. It hung right there. In fact, was faster than the 911 until it got to anything that was long straightaway, and then the 911 would walk away from it. So exciting news coming from the Cayman. Obviously won't be as good as it could be. Next up on the list, let's talk a little bit about the Bentley Continental GT series, as there's talking about a new Continental GT Supersport that's going to be coming soon. And they're talking about this thing making, with the W12 engine, making 650 brake horsepower. Well, the standard Continental GT Speed makes 616 brake horsepower. And apparently there's going to be a GT3 Continental Speed that's going to make around 675 horsepower, also using the W12. Kind of weird to me that you would take one automobile and try to make 3 different variants of this thing, all within very close confines of each other. The trick of it is, too, is they're talking about the Supersport. It's going to have a lot of lightweight materials, lighter weight car, better brakes, better suspension. But if that's the case, what's the GT3 going to be? So we'll wait and see what comes of this thing down the pike. But, you know, another GT Speed Supersport is not a bad deal anyway. Next up on the list, the brand new WRX kind of came on the scene without much notice, at least as far as not a bunch of screaming about this thing coming out too soon as this concept first showed up. Now, we don't know little to nothing about this automobile other than, well, you can see the thing, it has 2-piece rotors on this thing, which is pretty racy. Probably won't end up on the production car. In fact, it's got a ton of brake underneath this thing. Huge. Looks like 4 piston calipers up front and 2 pistons or 3 pistons in the rear. A lot of stopping power. Now, we have heard that the engine will be the 2.5 liter turbocharged flat 4, which is going to put out 265 brake horsepower and 244 pounds-feet of torque. Obviously going all-wheel drive with this vehicle, but a lot of braking system for so little horsepower. Not to mention, I like the car's nose, but the back end, the rear haunches of it, looks a little bit chunky. If you go to the belt line, which is just right at the bottom of the door glasses, to down to the rear tire, the top of the rear tire, a lot of room between there. It makes this car not as appealing as I think it could be. But this is also a concept piece. It's not the real deal. So we'll wait and see what comes of this thing in the future. Last up on the list, well, remember we did this a couple of shows ago. Showed off 3 of the highest of the high-end supercars that made their debuts at the Geneva Motor Show, and gave you the opportunity to vote on which one you would take, no matter what the situation. Money not an object, practicality not an object, just which do you thought was the most desirable. And I actually put a 4th one in. Well, we're 2 weeks beyond that, so we're actually going to look at some of the results, and the leader in the clubhouse is the McLaren P1, but it's only 1 vote ahead of the Ferrari LaFerrari. And coming up in 3rd, only 1 vote behind the Ferrari, is the Koenigsegg Hundra, which was kind of wonky because it really isn't a debut of a high-end supercar. It's just one automobile that it's the 100th automobile that Koenigsegg built. And amazingly enough, the Lamborghini has no votes whatsoever. Now, the top 3 are all within 2 votes, so it's all to play for. So if you want to vote on this deal and you didn't get a chance to, you can vote down in the show notes or go back and check that video or hit us up on the Facebook page if you want to vote. And we'll go back to this thing in the summer. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this week's Motor Cars Enthusiast. If you want to jump on over to the Facebook page, you can check out all the stuff we go over there, or you can subscribe to the channel at any time. Get the first dibs on the show as soon as they're out. And that's all that I thought was worth talking about. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.